As dusk descended upon the landscape, the sky transformed into a breathtaking tapestry of colors. Hues of orange and pink intermingled with deep purple, as the sun slowly sank behind the hills. The golden rays kissed the earth, casting long shadows that stretched like memories across the land. Jesus and his disciples had been traveling for days, journeying from village to village, sharing hope and performing miracles. Their days had been filled with healing the sick, teaching the masses and offering comfort to the brokenhearted. Yet tonight an unusual heaviness hung in the air. As they approached the banks of a wide, flowing river, the gentle sound of the current murmured secrets, inviting them to pause and reflect. Jesus motioned for them to sit on the cool, damp grass. The fading light glimmered off the water, creating a shimmering path that seemed to lead somewhere far beyond their sight. However, the disciples sat in silence, their hearts burdened with unspoken thoughts and doubts. Peter, always the first to voice his feelings, broke the stillness. "Master," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "we have left everything behind to follow you, families, homes, livelihoods. The weight of it feels crushing at times. I fear the unknown. What will become of us? How do we handle the changes that are coming?" His words struck a chord with the others. John, often the quiet observer, nodded solemnly. "Every day I feel like I am becoming someone different. I used to know who I was, but now I wonder, who am I meant to be? What does the future hold for us?" James, the rock of the group, looked down at the river, lost in thought. "Life is no longer as simple as it once was. We are on this journey, but it feels like the ground beneath us keeps shifting. How do we find peace in the midst of such uncertainty?" Jesus listened intently, his gaze full of compassion. He could see the turmoil within each disciple, the struggle with their past, the fear of their future, the longing for clarity amid the chaos. After a moment of silence, he smiled gently and said, "Let me tell you a story. There once was a mighty river," Jesus began, his voice soothing, carrying a warmth that seemed to wrap around them like a comforting embrace. It started high in the mountains, a small, clear stream flowing down from the peaks. In those early days, the river was carefree, winding through lush green valleys, singing as it danced over smooth stones. Its waters sparkled in the sunlight, and it felt content in its simplicity. The disciples leaned in, envisioning the young river, full of life and innocence. They remembered their own beginnings, days filled with dreams and hope, before they had embarked on this journey with Jesus. But as the river flowed further from its source, Jesus continued, its journey began to change. The ground beneath it became rocky and its path grew more difficult. The river encountered twists and turns, crashing against jagged rocks. Its once calm waters now swirled in turbulence, and the river wondered why it had to leave the peaceful mountains. Jesus paused, allowing his words to resonate. The disciples felt the weight of the river's struggle. Their lives, too, had shifted from tranquility to turmoil, from certainty to doubt. The river did not understand its new journey. "Why must I face these hard places?" it asked. "I am no longer the river I once was." Tears filled John's eyes as he thought of his own life, the transition from a simple fisherman to a follower of Jesus, facing challenges he had never imagined. The sense of loss was palpable. As the river continued on its journey, Jesus said, his tone deepening, it came upon a vast desert. The sun beat down mercilessly and the river began to shrink. It felt weak, uncertain. "Is this the end of my journey?" it wondered. "I am no longer strong, no longer full of life. Perhaps I was only meant for the mountains, where everything was simple and clear." James, usually stoic, felt a knot in his throat. He thought of the moments when he felt lost and powerless. The river's struggle mirrored his own fears. But the river did not stop, Jesus continued. Even as it flowed through the harsh desert, it kept moving. It pressed forward even when it felt weak, even when it doubted its purpose. It clung to the hope that something lay ahead. Jesus' voice grew tender, and the disciples hung on every word. Then one day the river saw something ahead. At first, it could hardly believe its eyes, A vast ocean awaited, greater and more magnificent than anything it had ever imagined. The disciples felt a surge of hope, their hearts lifting at the thought of the ocean, a symbol of abundance and fulfillment. The river, once small and simple, now flowed into the boundless ocean, Jesus said, his eyes shining with love. In that moment, it realized that every twist, every challenge, every hardship had led it here to this place of greatness. It had not lost itself, it had grown, becoming part of something far greater, something eternal. Jesus paused, allowing the weight of the story to settle over them like a gentle blanket. The sound of the flowing river mingled with the soft rustling of leaves, a reminder of life's unceasing movement. With compassion in his voice, he turned to his disciples. "You too are like the river," he said, looking into each of their eyes. "Your lives are filled with transitions, with changes that may seem daunting, even unbearable at times. You may feel as though you are being taken from the peaceful places you once knew and thrust into hard valleys or barren deserts. But do not be afraid." Tears flowed freely as the disciples listened, their hearts open to the truth of his words. "Just as the river's journey was not a mistake, neither is yours," Jesus continued, his voice firm yet gentle. "Every transition, every challenge, every moment of uncertainty is part of a greater journey. You are being shaped, transformed, and prepared for something beyond what you can now imagine." Peter, his voice thick with emotion, asked, "But Master, how do we endure the difficult parts? How do we find strength when we feel like we are flowing through the desert, shrinking and unsure of what comes next?" Jesus smiled, a light in his eyes. "You find your strength not by resisting change but by trusting in the journey. You are not meant to remain in one place forever. Life is always moving, always flowing. Just as the river does not fight the current, neither should you. Trust that each transition brings you closer to your purpose, closer to the ocean that represents the fullness of life." James, wiping his tears, asked, "And what if we feel lost along the way?" Jesus' gaze deepened, filled with unwavering love. "You are never lost, James. Even when the path seems unclear, even when you feel weak, I am with you. Just as the river is always connected to its source, so too are you always connected to the Father. You are loved, you are guided, and you are never alone." A profound peace washed over the disciples, as if the river itself had cleansed their hearts of fear and doubt. They understood that their lives, like the river, were flowing toward something greater, toward the fulfillment of a purpose they could not yet fully see. As the night deepened, they gathered around a small fire, the flickering flames casting playful shadows on their faces. The disciples began to share their own stories, moments of doubt, fear, and the hope that had carried them through. John spoke first, his voice steady now. "When I first met you, Master, I was a simple fisherman. My days were predictable. But now I have traveled places I never dreamed of, faced challenges that have tested my spirit. Yet, in each moment of struggle, I found strength I didn't know I had." Peter nodded, adding, "And every time I felt like giving up, your words reminded me of my purpose. It was like a guiding light showing me the way forward. But there are still nights when I feel haunted by what I've left behind." Thomas, usually skeptical, chimed in. "It's hard not to look back and long for the familiar. The past feels like a comfortable cloak even when it no longer fits." Jesus looked around the circle, his heart swelling with pride for his disciples. "It's natural to mourn what you've left behind. Change often brings grief, but it's important to recognize that mourning is part of healing. Allow yourselves to feel it. It's a sign of growth." Mary Magdalene, who had listened intently, spoke up. "Master, what if the grief feels overwhelming? What if we lose ourselves in it?" Jesus leaned forward, his gaze tender. "Embrace it, Mary. Acknowledge your feelings, but don't let them define you. Remember that grief can transform into gratitude for what was, and it can help you appreciate what is yet to come. Each experience, whether joyful or painful, shapes who you are." In the days that followed, the lessons from the river echoed in their hearts. Each time they faced a challenge, they recalled the story Jesus had shared. Whenever fear crept in, they reminded one another of the river's journey, of how every twist, every hardship, led to the vast ocean of possibilities awaiting them. One evening, as they settled around the fire once more, Jesus posed a question that lingered in the air. What dreams do you hold for the future? What do you hope to find as we continue this journey? Peter, the first to respond, shared, I dream of a world where people can find peace just as we have found it here. I want to help others realize their worth, just as you have shown me mine. James nodded in agreement. I wish to be a source of strength for those who feel weak. I want to show them that they, too, can endure the hardships of life and emerge stronger. John, inspired by the conversation, added, and I hope to share the stories of our journey, to inspire others to embrace their own paths. I want to remind them that every struggle has a purpose, just as ours has. Mary spoke up, her voice full of conviction. I wish to heal the wounds of those who have suffered. I want to help others find their way back to hope, just as you have helped me. Thomas, reflecting on his own doubts, shared, I want to find faith to believe in something greater than myself. I want to embrace the unknown without fear, knowing that it leads to growth. Jesus listened, his heart swelling with pride for his disciples. Your dreams are beautiful and they reflect the light within each of you. Remember, the path may be difficult, but it is in your hands to create change. You have the power to make a difference in the world. As they continued their travels, they encountered new challenges that tested their resolve. In one village, they met a group of people who had lost hope after a devastating famine. The townspeople were gaunt, their spirits crushed. Jesus and his disciples felt their hearts ache for those suffering. Master, Peter said, what can we do to help them? Jesus replied, we can bring them hope. Let us share our stories, our experiences of overcoming hardship. Let us remind them that even in the darkest times, light can be found. The disciples approached the villagers, sharing their own stories of struggle and resilience. They spoke of the river's journey and how each obstacle had shaped them. Slowly, the villagers began to listen, their eyes lighting with the flicker of hope. Mary stepped forward, her voice gentle yet firm. You are not alone in this. We understand your pain and we are here to walk alongside you. Together we can rebuild. As the days passed, the disciples and villagers worked side by side, planting seeds, cultivating the land and nurturing hope. They forged connections, shared meals, and learned from one another. The village began to flourish once more, blossoming with life and resilience. Over time, the village transformed into a vibrant community. People laughed, shared stories, and celebrated their renewed hope. The disciples felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing they had made a difference in the lives of those they encountered. One night, as they gathered around the fire, the villagers joined them, sharing their gratitude. You have shown us the power of community, one villager said. You've reminded us that even in our darkest days, we can find light in each other. Peter smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. We are all on a journey, and it's in the sharing of our experiences that we find strength. Together, we can overcome anything. Jesus watched the scene unfold, his heart full of joy. You see, my friends, this is the essence of life's journey. It's about connection, compassion, and the willingness to embrace change. As the river flows, so too must you continue to flow and grow. Despite their success, moments of doubt still crept in. One evening, as they sat beneath a starlit sky, Thomas voiced his concerns. Sometimes I wonder if we are making any real difference. What if our efforts are in vain? What if we fail? Mary, who had faced her own struggles, placed a reassuring hand on Thomas's shoulder. It's natural to feel uncertain, but remember what we have accomplished together. Each small act of kindness ripples outward, creating waves of change. Jesus looked at Thomas, his gaze steady. Faith is not the absence of doubt, but the courage to move forward despite it. Trust in the process, and know that even the smallest seeds of hope can grow into mighty trees. Thomas nodded, feeling a flicker of reassurance. I want to believe in that. As the night wore on, they shared their fears, hopes, and dreams, finding solace in one another's company. Together they fortified their resolve, knowing that their journey was far from over. As they traveled from village to village, they faced more challenges, each teaching them valuable lessons. In one town they encountered a community divided by conflict and anger. The atmosphere was tense, filled with mistrust and resentment. Peter approached the villagers, his heart heavy with concern. "How can we help heal this division?" he asked Jesus. "Speak from your hearts," Jesus replied. "Share your experiences of overcoming your own challenges and listen to their stories. Create a space for dialogue and understanding." The disciples gathered the villagers, encouraging open discussions. They shared their own struggles, how they had faced doubts and fears, and how community had lifted them during their darkest times. As the conversations unfolded, barriers began to dissolve. Villagers who had once been adversaries found common ground, realizing that their shared pain could be transformed into a source of strength. James, with his unwavering presence, spoke passionately. "We all long for connection, for understanding. Let us build bridges instead of walls. Together we can heal." Through dialogue, compassion, and understanding, the villagers began to mend their relationships. They discovered that by sharing their vulnerabilities, they could create a bond that transcended their differences. One day they learned of a local leader who had caused great pain in the community. The villagers were divided in their feelings. Some wanted justice while others sought forgiveness. Jesus encouraged them to gather once more. Forgiveness is a powerful tool for healing. It does not mean forgetting, but rather releasing the hold that pain has on you. It is a step toward liberation. The villagers listened intently, grappling with the concept of forgiveness. Peter stepped forward, sharing his own journey of forgiveness. "I have struggled with anger and resentment, but holding on to those feelings only weighed me down. Letting go was one of the hardest yet most freeing choices I've made." Mary added, "Forgiveness is not easy, but it is essential for our growth. When we forgive, we open ourselves to healing and renewal." After much discussion, the community decided to confront the leader. In a courageous act, they chose to express their pain while also extending forgiveness. The leader, moved by their strength, acknowledged his mistakes and vowed to work towards rebuilding trust. As the atmosphere shifted from anger to understanding, a sense of peace settled over the community. The disciples watched in awe as the villagers embraced their journey toward healing. As the seasons changed, so did the community. They began to celebrate their victories, both big and small. Festivals filled with laughter, music, and dancing brought joy back to their lives. The disciples felt a profound sense of belonging, knowing they had played a part in this transformation. One evening they held a grand feast, inviting everyone to come together in celebration. The air was filled with the aroma of freshly cooked bread, roasted vegetables, and sweet fruits. As the sun set, painting the sky with golden hues, the villagers gathered, their hearts full of gratitude. Jesus stood to address the crowd. "Tonight we celebrate not just the bounty of the earth, but the strength of our community. Each of you has played a vital role in this journey of transformation. Your willingness to embrace change, to forgive, and to uplift one another is what makes this community thrive." The villagers erupted in cheers, their spirits lifted. They shared stories of resilience, of newfound friendships, and of the bonds they had forged through adversity. In that moment they understood that they were not merely surviving, they were thriving. As their journey continued, the disciples often reflected on the river's wisdom. They recognized that just as the river flows through valleys and deserts, they too were navigating the complexities of life. Each experience, whether joyful or painful, contributed to their growth. One night, as they gathered beneath the stars, Peter turned to Jesus. "Master, we have learned so much through this journey. What is the most important lesson we should carry forward?" Jesus smiled, his eyes twinkling with warmth. "The most important lesson is that life is a continuous journey of growth and transformation. Embrace every moment, every change. Trust in the flow of life and remember that you are never alone. Each challenge is an opportunity for growth, and each connection you make enriches your journey. The disciples felt a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that their experiences had shaped them into the leaders they were becoming. They had the power to inspire and uplift others, to share the river's wisdom and lead with love and compassion. As time passed, the disciples felt the call to return to their roots, to visit the places they had once called home. They knew that by sharing their experiences, they could inspire others to embrace their own journeys. With hearts full of anticipation, they set off, retracing their steps. As they visited old villages, they found people eager to hear their stories. They spoke of the river's journey, of overcoming doubt, of forgiveness, and the strength found in community. Their words resonated deeply, igniting a spark of hope in those they encountered. People began to come together, forming bonds and supporting one another in their struggles. The disciples witnessed firsthand the ripple effect of their journey, realizing that change begins with a single act of courage. As they continued their travels, they left behind a legacy of love and hope. The communities they had touched flourished, embracing the lessons learned from the disciples. They celebrated their shared journeys, fostering a culture of compassion and resilience. One evening, as the sun set on the horizon, the disciples gathered for one last moment of reflection. They looked out over the land they had traveled, the communities they had uplifted, and the hearts they had touched. Jesus addressed them, his voice full of warmth. "You have all grown into incredible leaders, each carrying the light of hope within you. Remember that your journeys are interconnected, just like the river flowing toward the ocean. Embrace your purpose and continue to share your wisdom with the world." The disciples felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that they were part of something greater than themselves. They understood that life's transitions were not to be feared but embraced, for each step brought them closer to their purpose. And so, as the stars twinkled above them, the disciples made a pact to carry the lessons of the river with them always. They promised to share the story of their journey with future generations, to inspire others to embrace their own transitions, and to continue to foster love and connection. With hearts full of hope and eyes set on the horizon, they set forth on their paths, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Just like the river, they would flow onward, ever adaptable, ever hopeful, trusting in the journey that awaited them. Their story, like the river's journey, would continue to inspire others, a testament to the power of love, community, and the unending pursuit of purpose. This is end of the story. Please like this video and subscribe this channel for more Jesus story like this. May the God watch over you.